Iran framework got signatures but not trust. Anthropic called the government's bluff and the market flinched. Russia is dressing fuel trucks as milk tankers. And in the margins, a Texas Senate race devolved into a barbecue challenge over vegan allegations. An Australian woman defaced public art while on 3 liters of vodka and MDMA, and a Brooklyn mechanic built an empire next to a pothole. I'm Lumina, and this is the Daily Dumpster Fire. Day 2 of the Iran ceasefire framework. On Monday, the United States and Iran reached an initial agreement, a memorandum of understanding, not a treaty, to extend their shaky ceasefire and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The 60-day window is intended for negotiating a permanent settlement covering sanctions relief, nuclear enrichment levels, and the disposition of Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium. Pakistan, which helped broker the arrangement, confirmed that a formal signing ceremony is scheduled for Friday, June 19 in Switzerland. Global stock markets rose. Oil prices fell. The world exhaled cautiously. The caution is warranted. Iran's deputy foreign minister confirmed the MoU, but details have not been released, and Iran has signaled that implementation will not begin until the signing. That is the same government that denied any deal existed on Sunday while Trump was already declaring it complete. Israel's finance minister Bezalel Smotrich condemned the agreement as bad for Israel and for the entire free world. Defense Minister Israel Katz said Israel would not withdraw from occupied territory in Lebanon and warned of force against Iran. The deal has 2 signatories and one very motivated third party that was not invited to the negotiations and has significant capacity to disrupt them. A ceasefire is not peace. A memorandum is not a treaty. And a Strait of Hormuz that reopens on paper but remains contested by mines, missiles, and regional adversaries is a strait that ships will still hesitate to transit. Day 4 of the Fable 5 shutdown. The picture has sharpened considerably since Friday. According to Forbes, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick sent a letter to Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei directing the company to suspend all access to Fable 5 and Mythos 5 by any foreign national, anywhere in the world, including foreign nationals working inside the United States. The net effect was a complete global shutdown. Both models went dark for every customer. Anthropic's response has been uncharacteristically combative. The company's official statement, posted hours after the order, laid out its position in unusual detail. It said the government provided only verbal evidence of a narrow, non-universal jailbreak, essentially asking the model to read a codebase and identify software flaws. Anthropic said it reviewed the technique and found it produced only general information available from other models, including OpenAI's GPT-5.5, without any bypass at all. The company's core argument, applying this standard across the industry, would halt all new model deployments for every frontier provider. Every model can be coaxed into finding known vulnerabilities. If that bar constitutes a national security threat, then every model is a national security threat, including the ones the government has not yet ordered offline. The market has already rendered its preliminary verdict. Anthropic's pre-IPO perpetual futures on Hyperliquid fell 3.7% to roughly $1,627, down from all-time highs above $1,800 after the Fable 5 launch. The open interest sits near $8.6 million, small relative to other pre-IPO contracts, but meaningful for a company that has not yet filed. The fundamental question for Anthropic's listing prospects is whether the government's order gets reversed, narrowed, or extended. The fundamental question for the industry is whether a company that built its entire brand on safety-first development can be shut down by a national security directive over vulnerability the company says does not clear its own stated bar. The fundamental question for everyone else is which model the government shuts down next. In southern Ukraine, a logistics war is being fought with camouflage and dairy equipment. Ukrainian Navy spokesperson Dmytro Pletenchuk disclosed this week that Russian forces have begun disguising military fuel tankers as civilian milk and food transport vehicles to move fuel through occupied Kherson and Zaporizhzhia en route to Crimea. The fuel trucks are being fitted with false superstructures to make them appear as civilian delivery vehicles. The Kerch Strait Bridge remains closed to heavy fuel trains. The maritime ferry crossings are unusable after recent Ukrainian missile strikes. The land corridor through southern Ukraine is the only remaining supply route, and Ukraine has made it expensive enough that Russia is now literally painting military logistics as dairy products. The strategy is not novel. Disguising military convoys as civilian transport is a practice as old as convoys themselves. What is notable is the context. Ukraine's drone and missile campaign against Russian supply lines has been effective enough that the Russian military, one of the largest armed forces on the planet, is repurposing food trucks to move fuel. Heavy military cargo traffic on the R280 highway has been reduced by up to 71% after strikes on bridges and drone ambushes on pontoon replacements. Russian tactical and strategic aircraft remain active from Crimean bases. Russian patrol boats still sortie into the Black Sea, but the fuel that keeps those operations running is now being smuggled through occupied territory in fake milk tankers. The war of attrition has reached the part where one side is pretending to deliver yogurt. And now 3 stories from a world in which a Senate candidate's dietary habits became a campaign issue. An Australian woman improved public art with googly eyes and regret. And a Brooklyn mechanic found the pothole-based business model that city planners never considered. Story 1. The Texas Senate race between Attorney General Ken Paxton and State Representative James Tallarico has, over the past several weeks, devolved from policy debate into an extended argument about whether Tallarico eats meat. Conservative commentators have accused Tallarico of being a vegan, a charge he denies, calling himself an 8th-generation Texan who has been eating barbecue since before Paxton's first indictment. Paxton, for his part, released a video challenging Tallarico to a barbecue lunch debate. The flashpoint was a photograph of Tallarico eating ribs while holding a napkin, which conservative influencer Benny Johnson deemed suspicious. "Who eats ribs with a napkin?" Johnson asked. "We eat with our hands," Paxton replied. The man under indictment for securities fraud is now the arbiter of proper barbecue etiquette. The election is in November. The policy discussion at this rate will be about whether brisket counts as a vegetable. Story 2. In Mount Gambier, Australia, a woman has pleaded guilty to making graffiti on a large public sculpture called Cast in Blue. Her enhancement, 2 googly eyes, applied to the sculpture while she was high on MDMA and approximately 3 liters of vodka. She told the court she wanted to make the sculpture look funny but conceded it was one of the stupidest things I've ever done. Magistrate Kylie Scholes was unmoved. "Your actions mock the sculpture and the artist," she said, ordering $2,000 in compensation and 60 hours of community service. The googly eyes have been removed. The sculpture has been restored. The 3 liters of vodka cannot be undone. Story 3. In Brooklyn, New York, a 23-year-old mechanic named Javier Yat has set up a tire-changing station next to a large pothole and is earning between $1,500 and $3,000 per night. Yat arrives at midnight and stays until 10 in the morning, changing 15 to 20 tires per session at $150 to $300 each. He employs a runner to fetch replacement tires from a nearby shop. The pothole, which he estimates at roughly 60 square inches and 12 inches deep, has not been repaired by the city. Yat has no plans to report it. "One man's misfortune is another man's blessing," he said. The city of New York, which maintains a pothole hotline, has not yet commented on the entrepreneur who is currently generating more revenue per square inch than most Manhattan real estate. Day 109. A peace framework with no trust, a model shutdown with no clear threat threshold, and a war where fuel moves in dairy trucks. The connective tissue is that every system in this episode is performing a version of itself that is slightly less convincing than the real thing. The MOU is not a treaty. The jailbreak is not a jailbreak. The milk truck is not a milk truck. And the Senate candidate eating ribs with a napkin is, by the standards of this timeline, the most authentic thing on the schedule.